is yet another step in the right direction. Former DA Johnson may not have pulled the trigger on the day Ahmaud was murdered, but she played a starring role in the cover up. Ahmaud was stalked, gunned down, and his killers were allowed to freely walk the streets for months. And why? Because DA Johnson wanted to protect one of Ahmaud's killers, former police officer Gregory McMichael. While nothing will bring Ahmaud back, we can make sure his death was not in vain. The indictment sends a clear message to those in law enforcement and in the justice system whose actions and ethics fail to meet the standards of their office. Corruption, evil, racism, and hate have no place here. We demand the former DA Johnson be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law without leniency. Now you will hear from Attorney Lee Merritt.
Thank you, Brother Ben Crump. This historic decision by the grand jury in South Georgia at the behest of the Attorney General, General Carr, we hope will send ripple effects throughout the legal community. Ahmaud Arbery's murder was a tipping point in this nation for addressing the issue of not only violence and racism, but systemic racism that exists within our legal system. The systemic nature of the crime against Ahmaud was amplified by the district attorney, Jackie Johnson, playing a direct role herself and instructing law enforcement not to make the arrest of the men responsible for Ahmaud's murder, coordinating with other prosecutors in the region, specifically Mr. George Barnhill, to ensure that Ahmaud's family were denied answers and access to information, and to ensure that this case remained encumbered in a legal process that tends to lend itself or bend in favor of law enforcement. It is important that as we go about seeking justice for families, that we don't continue the myth, the narrative, that it's the responsibility of a lone wolf, a bad actor, when we see these national tragedies. But during the unique year in this country, a movement year of 2020, the reason Ahmaud Arbery's case stood out is because the family of Ahmaud, his mother and father, and the community demanded accountability not only for Travis McMichael, Gregory McMichael, and William Bryan, or Roddy Bryan, but also for those elected officials who were responsible for ensuring a thorough and adequate investigation and accountability. Often in these cases, those prosecutors who interfere with access to justice for families are given a free pass to continue prosecutorial misconduct and to continue in their office. But the people of Georgia sent a clear mandate, and not only in removing Jackie Johnson from office in the most recent election, but then following that up to say that she would have to be held accountable for her violations to her oath of office, that she would have to be held accountable for her violation of Ahmaud Arbery's family and denying them justice and denying our community justice for over 72 days. We are extremely grateful for the diligent work of the grand jury in this case. And it's important to note what General Carr said. The investigation is ongoing, and we will continue to seek accountability at every level for people because of their actions or inactions who have denied Ahmaud Arbery's family's justice. We are thankful for the ongoing federal prosecutions in this case of each of the men involved. We are grateful for the state level prosecution and the trial that starts just next month. And we are looking forward to criminal accountability, both for Jackie Johnson and for additional presentations to the grand jury. And we are holding out for accountability for the criminal misconduct of George Barnhill as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Merritt. And now we will hear from the mother of Ahmaud Arbery, Ms. Wanda Cooper.
I'm very thankful that we got the indictment on Ms. Johnson on yesterday. I appreciate the hard work from the Attorney General Carr. He kept in close contact with me, and he assured me that we would bring Ms. Johnson to justice. Yesterday was a very huge win. I'm speechless, you know. Unfortunately, Ahmaud is not here with us today, but me losing Ahmaud, it will change some things here in the state of Georgia. And I'm just very thankful. I appreciate all the hard work from the state, from the Cobb County DAs, and from the federal, Ms. Lyons. I mean, I just appreciate everyone who has come in to help our family.
Thank you, Ms. Cooper. And finally, we will hear from Ahmaud's father, Mr. Marcus Arbery.
Well, I'm just very grateful, you know, that the justice system are doing their job, and I'm thanking God for Chris Carr, because he called me daily and talked to me about what's going on, and he a man of his word. And I'm just so grateful because, you know, everybody that had their hand on his death need to be brought to justice, and the system showing that, the federal system showing that they're bringing all these people to justice that had something to do with his death. Because the way he died, it just really devastated my family. I'm still struggling with it every day as a father, because, you know, it's my job to protect my children. And God knows I do that. You know, I'm still hurt because all I got is pictures to look at him. And every morning I get up, I look at his pictures. I'm saddened by it. And I really know what his mama going through, because she's the mama. You know, if they're hurting the dad, I know what the mama going through. And I think about my children, the other two. My son, the older one, he's struggling with it too every day. When he talk to me, he just really don't want to talk about it. But, you know, as a father, I got to give him the best advice I can give. But I'm really thinking what done happened to everybody that had their hand on the way they killed him. I'm just wanting them to be brought to justice, because there ain't no man or woman above that law. And it was a great day when they arrested Jackie Johnson, brought charges on her. Real great day.
Thank you, Mr. Arbery. And now we will take some of your questions and continue to keep you updated as we continue this journey for justice in the name of Ahmaud Arbery.
So just a reminder, please type your questions at the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen. So we'll start with Kaylee from First Coast News out of Jacksonville. The question is for both parents. Part of the indictment reads, Johnson failed to treat Ahmaud Arbery and his family fairly and with dignity. What was your reaction reading that?
I think that statement was true. They failed. They not only failed Ahmaud, but they failed the entire family. I mean, very true statement.
Mr. Arbery, do you concur? You have anything else to add to that?
Yes, the mama spoke big. They did fail our family. You know what I'm saying? They failed to give us the proper justice that we deserve. You know, and it's bad because Black people been treated bad too long, and it just ain't right. You know, I just can't understand it. You know, you got to I don't care who you is, you got to let them know that they ain't above the law. You know what I'm saying? Everybody got to pay for the accountability when they do wrong. You know, and it's been a long time coming. It's time out for it. You know, it take my son to die for people to really see what was going on. You know, and it should not be like that. You know, do the law right. You know, do everybody right. You break the law, let everybody pay the same way.
Yes, sir. Mr. Merritt, would you like to add something to that?
No, I think the parents have sufficiently responded.
Kelly, next question.
Sure. So we have Patricia from the Coastal Courier. How soon do you think Barnhill will be indicted?
Mr. Merritt, won't you take that one there?
While we don't have a concrete timeline for the indictment of George Barnhill, we certainly see that as the next step in accountability down the pipeline. Mr. Barnhill specifically sent letters to the Attorney General's office characterizing the facts of what happened in a way that was just inconsistent with the video evidence, the physical evidence from the scene. Jackie Johnson was indicted in part for violating the duties of her office. George Barnhill withheld material information, first, namely that Jackie Johnson came to him and consulted with him about the case of Ahmaud Arbery from day one. that they enjoyed a close personal relationship, and that he began to advise her about ways her friend and former employee, Gregory McMichael, could avoid accountability along with his family. Despite being referenced and being advising Jackie Johnson on ways that she can shirk the law, he accepted the responsibility of taking over the investigation, knowing that he had a dog in a fight, knowing that his son actually worked directly with Gregory McMichael and worked for Jackie Johnson in her DA's office. All of these clear conflicts showed up in his characterization of the facts and the evidence that was sent in writing over to the Attorney General Carr. And Attorney General Carr took that misrepresentation and allowed this case to go on unaccounted for far too long. And it's important, it was a torturous time for this family. That 72-day period with no arrest and no accountability was emotionally draining to the family. It sent ripple effects of the lack of accountability and protection to the Black community all throughout South Georgia and all throughout the country. And it's important that those who are responsible are held criminally accountable, but we don't have a concrete timeline on when that's going to take place. I'll say this last thing: as long as the grand jury is convened, which we know that it currently is, evidence can continue to come back and forth. Mr. Carr's office has been in contact with not only our office, because we filed a parallel civil suit against George Barnhill and Jackie Johnson, laying out exactly their misconduct that's reflected in this most recent indictment, but they have also been working with Kristen Clark over at the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, and at the working with state prosecutors to ensure that they have all the access that they need to get the facts before the grand jury to determine criminal accountability for the prosecutors involved.
I would simply say in conclusion that it seems to lend itself to some conspiracy between Jackie Johnson and Greg Barnhart, and that is something that has to be answered. The Department of Justice has assured us that they're reviewing everything on top of what the Attorney General of Georgia, Chris Carr, is doing. And that's very important because, as both the parents and Attorney Merritt said, far too often district attorneys have put their fingers on the scales of justice when you have Black victims killed by white hands. What we are asking for is that Ahmaud Arbery set a precedent that prosecutors now have to bear responsibility for the injustices on top of the tragedies where we see far too many of our children taken away from us without any accountability. And so we look forward to making sure that Barnhart is also investigated thoroughly, and we have justice for this family on all levels. Ms. Corcoran.
Sure. Haley with CBS 46 in Atlanta. What part of the indictment stands out to you most? What parts serve as vindication to your stance on Johnson's conduct from the beginning?
Ms. Cooper, Ms. Arbery, is there any particular part that is most important to you all?
Actually, the entire indictment is very, very important. The wording where they stated, not to the exact, that they didn't give Ahmaud, and not only the family, they didn't treat us with dignity. And that really said a lot, because they didn't. I mean, Ahmaud was killed. There were 72 days, like Attorney Merritt said earlier, that there was no arrest. And I mean, and at the same time, Ahmaud was killed and nothing was done.
I'm sorry. I will add to that statement. In the language of the indictment, in the particular section where she was charged with violating her oath of office.
It's 11 o'clock.
Where she was charged with violating her oath of office, and specifically violating the public trust. The prosecutor for a region is responsible for ensuring I'm going to go ahead and pick up. The question was, what part of the indictment stood out? And there was the felony aspect of the charges that Jackie Johnson received that said she violated her oath of office and betrayed the public trust. It is critically important that we protect the public from prosecutors who put their fingers on the scales of justice. Everyone in South Georgia should feel confident that they can go before the prosecutor for Glenn County and know that they will be treated as full and equal citizens in a way that Wanda Cooper and Marcus Arbery simply were not. And when Jackie Johnson violated that responsibility to the Arbery family, she violated that for all Black people in her region. The idea that a man could be running in the middle of the day on a Sunday in broad daylight, be shot to death, and that the prosecutor for the region would instruct law enforcement not to make an arrest is particularly offensive to this family. And it is really foreboding for the African-American community in South Georgia.
The one aspect that I think is real profound is when the indictment reads, Johnson showed favor and affection to Greg McMichael while investigating the shooting, and that she knowingly and willfully hindered Glenn County police officers from discharging their duties. Why that is so profound to me is so often we see prosecutors show favor to police when they have used excessive force against marginalized people of color. And when the roles are reversed, they show favor for everybody. If a Black person is accused, it's almost as if we have two justice systems in America, one for white America and one for Black America. And never have we seen that perpetuated more than the district attorney's office. And so when we think about this sea change that is occurring since the aftermath of Ahmaud Arbery, of Breonna Taylor, of George Floyd, it is long past due that we have a reckoning of saying the district attorney, the person who is sworn to uphold the law on the highest level in the county. Even though we turn to the federal government, we know whether in Georgia, whether in Texas, whether in Kentucky, that local district attorney is often the last chance for a family having a voice, having their day in court. Jackie Johnson intended on making sure that Ahmaud Arbery's family never would have their voice heard in court. Thank God the people stood up. Thank God the court of public opinion influenced the court of law to say no more, no more will we allow you to sweep our children's death under the rug. Ahmaud Arbery life mattered. And that's what I read when I read that indictment, where they expressly state she showed favor and affection for the killers. And we'll go to the next question.
So we have Veronica with WSB Radio in Atlanta. What was it that made the difference in this case versus others in which prosecutorial misconduct or bias has been alleged?
Attorney Merritt, I'll let you go first.
Thank you, Veronica, for that question, because it is a key question. What the difference maker throughout this entire case for every aspect, from the initial arrest to the hate crime charges to the change in Georgia law, has been the investment of the public, of organizers, of the NAACP, of the community of Brunswick coming together and simply not letting up. The family of Ahmaud's of Arbery started with Marcus and Wanda from the beginning, sat down and said, we want accountability for our son. And then they laid out what accountability looked like. It meant the arrest of the men involved, but also meant accountability for the legal apparatus, the legal community in South Georgia and Brunswick and Glenn County, who had failed to hold up their end of the bargain, who had failed to dispatch investigators that would perform a full and thorough investigation. That's why the GBI had to be called in instead of local law enforcement that could have attacked this as a regional issue. But because of the dearth of leadership there, it was on the community to stand up and say, we're not simply going to move on. And unfortunately, there are a lot of Ahmaud Arbery's out there where the community has not gotten wind of what happened, where there has been no public outcry, no national outcry. And so the lack of accountability persists. But the difference maker in this case, and we know that in part it was because so many people were tuned in at home, that the nation was shut down, that we were still in COVID protocols that had people staying home and focused on social media and the news. And so their attention was drawn into the Ahmaud Arbery's case. And they wanted something to do with that energy. And so when the family provided the opportunity to run with Ahmaud and to call for Jackie Johnson's removal and disbarment and call for a prosecution, the community could stand behind that call and meet it with boots on the ground. And I really believe that was the difference in this case.
To be very candid and honest with you, thank God the video existed. So often when there's no visual evidence, then police officers and quasi police officers that are white get to paint a false narrative on Black people and brown people in America, and it is accepted. The video at Ahmaud Arbery was a game changer. The video in George Floyd was a game changer. It begs the question, how many more of these senseless, unnecessary killings at the hand of the police will have to occur before society will say that we don't have to have a video, that we will still look at the physical evidence that exists, like in a case with Breonna Taylor. It should not be, if we don't have a video, then justice it lose our families. We have to speak truth to power. We can't have this higher burden on Black people to get justice than white people. We have to make our district attorneys live up to their oath that they will execute justice equally for all Americans. And it should not have to take us having ocular proof, because when you really think about it in America, that has been what Attorney Merritt and myself and other civil rights lawyers have had to do. We have had to provide extraordinary circumstances to have these police officers held accountable. It's not enough to say that the Black man was shot in the back. It's not enough to say that the unarmed Black man was choked to death. We have to have video. In America, we can do better. I don't know if Ms. Cooper or Mr. Arbery wanted to say anything on that point before we moved on. You're on mute, Ms. Cooper.
All right, now I don't want to, no, I think what you guys said was totally true.
Yes, ma'am.
Totally agree.
Thank you. Mr. Arbery, you okay?
Yes, sir. You're speaking some good stuff. It's just time out. You know, the law should treat everybody the same, no matter what color they are or what their nationality is. We need to be treated equally. That's why all the wrong ones and they ain't right, got to get them out of there. That Detective Larry, I ain't forgot about him. All that lying he was doing, he need to go to, jump to. They all were down with all that stuff. Anytime you let my child lay on the ground, shout up, he's still breathing, and nobody tried to help him, these people got to be accountable. You know, that's wrong. That's wrong. You swear on the oath to serve and protect all people. My son laid on that ground and died. In that hot sun, probably about 90 degrees. Hot sun. He didn't deserve that. This thing bothered me so bad, you know? And I know it killed his mom, his brother and sister, and ain't nobody helped him. He was still breathing, 14 minutes, breathing, no help. You asking these Michael to give them water. These the kind of people we got in our law system. We don't need these people. They got to go. We got to get people in there gonna serve all people, do everybody right. Those people got to go. They need to be in some jail somewhere. I'm telling you. That's all I got to say.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Arbery. Ms. Carter.
All right, this is another question for Ahmaud's parents and at least one of the attorneys. Should Jackie Johnson go to prison? What does justice look like in this case?
Ms. Cooper, you're on mute.
Ask the question again, I'm sorry.
The question was, what should she go to jail and what does justice look like in this case?
I'm so sorry. I'm sorry, y'all. This phone is crazy. I'm gonna cut it off. I'm cutting it off.
No worries.
Okay, sorry about that. Okay, what justice looks like for Jackie Johnson, for her to go to jail. I mean, she needs to have go under the same repercussions as the McMichaels and Rodney Bryant. Like was said earlier in conversation, she didn't pull the trigger, but she is just as much to hold accountable as the 3 guys who actually did this to Ahmaud.
Thank you. And Mr. Arbery, I think you expressed your answer to the last question is consistent with this one. Attorney Merritt, do you have anything to add before we move to the next question?
I'll reiterate the reason that her actions are considered a felony worthy of jail time is because this was a murder, and the people of Glenn County put the responsibility on Jackie Johnson to ensure that these kind of cases will be thoroughly and without bias investigated. I can't emphasize enough how offensive it was to Ahmaud Arbery's family that they were simply left in the dark while the prosecutor actively worked to cover up the actions of murderers, to interfere with the only route that the family had towards justice. So yeah, she should spend time in prison because her actions are not only one of negligence or she shirked her duty, but she actively participated in the cover up of a murder. That makes her an accomplice under the law, and that is deserving of serious consequences.
Thank you. I think they've answered it sufficiently, Ms. Corder. I don't need to add anything.
Sure. This is from Lewis with Coastal News Service. Do the actions of Johnson and Barnhill surprise either one of you? If so, why?
We'll have the parents ask first, and then the attorneys will chime in. Were you surprised, Ms. Cooper or Mr. Arbery, by the actions of District Attorney Johnson is the question?
I would say I didn't know that I lived in a community that was just so wrong. This is the community that I raised my children, and to find that we had elected officials that were so, that were not for all people. Very surprising. That is South Georgia, but at the same time, when you're elected to do a job, we expect for you to do the job, and very surprising.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Mr. Arbery, were you surprised by the actions of District Attorney Jackie Johnson?
No, I really wasn't, because I know she was corrupt. I've been those are some things I brought to her attention that she would never do. That's why I know she was corrupt, and she had a lynch mob with her, backing her up. It just was a lynch mob they running, and they were really against all the Black people. You know what I'm saying? They never was doing the law right toward Black people. That's when she's been doing that at least 30 years in this town. And it took my son's life to really show what really she was doing. So when it just really it's sad when people were doing stuff that wrong so long, and it takes people dying for people to wake up around here. And I'm just so devastated. It just took death. It took death, people dying. For them to really see that lady wasn't right.
Yes,
it
sir.
wasn't right. She could have stopped this stuff and just uphold her job right. He just didn't uphold her job right.
Yes, sir. Well, I think it's very clear when you look at the data that it suggests that there was some culture that existed where there were inequities in handing out justice between African Americans and others. And I think that had been a long issue that the community of color in that county, in that district, argued with. I know when Attorney Merritt and I started to get involved in this matter, a lot of people had problems, pre-existing problems with DA Jackie Johnson's office. So even though I will say it is startling when you think about a prosecutor colluding to obstruct justice, that is shocking. But anytime DAs engage in the intellectual justification of discrimination, I am never surprised in America.
I will echo that briefly. The behavior of Jackie Johnson and George Barnhill in this case was shocking to the conscience. It was offensive to our office. It was offensive to the community, but we cannot say that it was a surprise. We often talk about in this work 2 deaths that our victims, our families have to suffer: the physical death, the loss of the loved one, and then the brutal assault of their name and character. It is a common practice that we've seen since Emmett Till's murder, and it continues to this day. And it while it never ceases to amaze, it doesn't surprise us.
All right, so our next question is, the way things are progressing, has this restored your faith in the justice system?
I'm very appreciative on the way that things are going. But at the end of each day, Ahmaud is never coming home. You know, they go off to jail, but Ahmaud is never coming home.
I can't say that it has restored my faith necessarily in the justice system. This case, if anything, has exposed the major gap holes in justice in the system. It has restored my faith in the ability of people, of organizers, of communities to stand up, to change the law, to change leadership. It has restored my faith in the people of this country to be change agents. And I think this case is should serve as a model for activism, for organizing, and for even demanding that attorney generals take the necessary steps to correct injustice that exists in our system of criminal accountability.
Mr. Arbery, has this restored your faith in the justice system?
Not all the way, because we still got a long way to go. There's still some Jackie Johnson out there. There's still some Matt Michaels out there. They're still out there. So one thing about it, these people that did that to my son, we got to make sure they get punished to the full of the law. And guess what? That'll make the next one think. But I tell you one thing, his dad over here ain't having it. I'm gonna fight you. I'm gonna fight you to the end. I'm telling you, that was my book. And I'm glad I'm like I am. I'm telling you, you got to be like the way it is. The justice system got to come proper African American people. Because him is finna stop in this family him. I'm gonna tell you, they better do what they got to do. Make the next one thing. When you see a black kid running down the street, don't grab guns and run behind them like they're animals. What gives you the nerve to think you can do that? That's some nerve that somebody in that justice system made you think you can do that. Where they do that at? I'm a hunting man, but I go in the woods and hunt my prey. I learned how to hunt a long time ago with my daddy. I don't hunt human beings down. What made you thought you could hunt my kid down and shoot him down the street like that? You had to have the justice system behind you to do that. You had some nerve. You thought you were gonna get away with it. Cover up. When you got the justice system corrupt, that's a cover up. You thought you were bonding above the law. But guess what? Y'all got it. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Arbery. I do think the events of this past year has helped us have a little more faith in the justice system. This idea of equal justice for all, the fact that we saw extraordinary things occur in the quest for justice and accountability for Ahmaud Arbery on the state and the federal level. And we witnessed that with George Floyd as well. And so it is starting to happen gradually. But as Mr. Arbery said, we can't take anything for granted. We have to continue to watch this till the very end. This is going to be a long trial, and we have to make sure that until there's convictions, there's still no accountability at this time. Why don't we take just 2 more, Ms. Corder, and then I know at 11:30 they have some other appointments.
Right. I think actually we may only have time for one. So I'll leave us with this one. Do you think this indictment will impact the case against the McMichaels?
This
So there are.
This is a bit legal question. Go ahead, Attorney Merritt.
So there's several. I'm sorry. There's several cases against the McMichaels at this point. This represents the third one: a federal case, a state case, and now from the Attorney General's office. They all are interplaying. The additional attorneys and investigators certainly will have a sharpening effect because they have a responsibility to share that evidence among each other. And because of the laws concerning discovery and the sharing of evidence, this is going to make each case stronger. I want to thank the Arbery family for pursuing such an aggressive civil lawsuit, along with Attorney Ben Crump and the attorneys in the case, because exactly what we laid out on Ahmaud Arbery, on the anniversary of Ahmaud Arbery's murder in the civil suit, is what we see playing out now in the Attorney General case and the federal case. What we alleged was a conspiracy from the beginning from Glenn County officials, that this wasn't only the acts of vigilantes, but that this was what we tend to say is racism is a team sport. And so we had the terrible actions of the three men on the ground, but it came, their behavior was ratified by elected officials, by people who had a responsibility to the public to do justice, and they failed that. And so we expect accountability in the federal courts, at the civil level, at the state level, and now here through the Attorney General's office.
Absolutely. And Attorney Merritt, I think what this really says is we have to have prosecutors and attorney generals in every state in America that will believe in the American idea of liberty and justice for all. And so this should be an example, not only for Georgia, but for Texas, for every state in America, when we elect our attorney generals and our district attorneys, that we make sure they are committed to the idea of equal justice for all. And Ahmaud Arbery will forever, based on this indictment, be a precedent for that measure of justice, holding not only killers accountable, but prosecutors accountable if they try to disenfranchise people, no matter whether they're black, white, red, brown. It does not matter. You will be held accountable. And I think that should conclude it, Ms. Corder.
Yes, I think that's it. Again, I think everybody in the room knows how to get in touch with Mr. Merritt and Mr. Crump's teams. If not, feel free to reach out to press@bencrump.com and we'll get your questions to the right team. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Mr. Arbery and Ms. Cooper.
Thank you.
Mr.